YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage back. I am excited to be back. I missed a day, but it feels like I missed like an eternity. I try not to miss a day of uploads for y'all very often. Holy cow. This week has been something else. It's been extremely busy at work, and then it's actually extremely busy trying to get some YouTube stuff done too. As some of you have seen, I've done a vlog on my trip with MSI, which was a lot of fun, but man, vlogs take a lot of work. At least they do for me, because I'm not used to them. And I was up till like 2 a.m. getting a bunch of stuff done for that. And then I've also been busy building the computer that I'm going to give away to you all, and it looks so awesome. I'm so excited to give it to someone, and I've been running the benchmarks on it already. And just to give you guys a little preview, like this was a curiosity thing, right? So I'm not going to give it away with a GTX 1080 in it, but I had my old GTX 1080 here, and I still had the benchmarks from my, here, let's get this started, because I'm chatting. Let's go ahead and load up this one. I want to see this Hammerer rush. I've got the benchmarks from my 1080 when it was in my i7 build, and the benchmarks on the Ryzen 5 are pretty impressive. They're not as good as my i7, but this Ryzen 5 was really meant as a competitor for the i5, and I'm going to actually change the settings on my i7 to make it more like an i5 and rerun them, but really an impressive performance out of this computer so far, and I will tell you all more details about it. Some of you keep asking me, like, how do I join the giveaway? Don't worry, you're not missing anything. I'm going to get something set up on Gleam, and you'll be able to join via a link when the time comes. Next week, Lionheart and I are going to make a video together about the giveaway, and we'll show it to you. So the dwarf player here was doing a hammer rush versus the vampire counts, which I was curious to see. I don't know what this battle's going to be like in terms of skill level or anything for the players, but you don't see hammers real often for the dwarves, and I was like, I want to see what the action is this guy brings. So 2 Slayers, 2 Runesmiths, Rune Lord. Definitely would not recommend putting your Rune Lord on an anvil if you really wanted to make something like this more effective, because the anvil is basically, it just keeps your Lord static so that he can get the crap beat out of him by monstrous units. So typically not a good idea. Is Manfred going to try and line up a Wind of Death? He's coming out to the side here like he really wants to line up a Wind of Death. So there's a Blood Knight, White King, Manfred, 2 Crypt Horrors, line of Skeletons, back line of Graveguard, Great Weapons, and 1 Sternsman. Not a crazy... The only bad thing about this vampire move right here is that the Unholy Lodestone is too far away from the dwarves. But this small dwarf army, there's definitely builds, I think, that could suffer a lot. Look at it doing the damage to the Blood Knights back here, and then just the 2 units kept back here to keep the stuff on us that tries to attack the cannon. May actually work out in this case. Manfred, like I said, he kind of keeps lining up here like he wants to do a Wind of Death, but he's not quite lined up for a Wind of Death. These Hammerers are actually going to get an absurd number of kills versus the Skeletons. The Graveguard with Great Weapons will come in and do slightly better, and you can see the Blood Knights here, almost half health just from the cannon attacks, and then there's miners to get in their way as well. The Lodestone is still too far away, and now it looks like the Crypt Horrors, well, they can't come around the flanks in this case. If the Crypt Horrors would have come around the flanks, they would have been slaughtered by the Slayers. Slayers will tear up Crypt Horrors something fierce, and they're being thrown in against this Slayer's moving towards the flank. The Vampire's Corpse Cart is still too far away, and Manfred hasn't, I mean, there's a Rune of Wrath and Ruin here on the Königstein Stalkers. There comes the Wind of Death. It gets a pretty darn good hit over here on these Hammerers. 57 kills, so not an astonishing Wind of Death, but wasn't terrible. The Blood Knights have gone for the cannon out here, and they've managed to pierce through and to rout the cannon unit. But at this point, the damage done and the time wasted with these Blood Knights and the White King, I think, is worth it for the dwarf player. And there's not enough monstrous units over here to deal with the dwarf leadership, which I think is going to be the real undoing for the vampires. They had 102 kills on these hammers. They got hit by the Wind of Death, and far more than that for, well, this hammer unit right here not doing so great. Grumbling Guard doing very well, even better than the Hammerers, which is not entirely surprising because they never get tired. Slayers are going to rip apart this corpse cart that was left unguarded, and the vampires have a big problem here. The Hammerers are easily cutting their way through the vampire infantry, which is not surprising. When Hammerers can't be hit by magic or monsters or something else like that, they will get the damage done. But the reason why you don't see them used too often is just because they become a very, very expensive target for artillery, for other stuff. So I think that's the reason why you don't see hammerers as often. Look at the slayers getting into the back of these cryptors. Cryptors are a great unit for wearing out the dwarves if you can keep them safe from skirmishers. The Blood Knights finally peeled loose from the fight with the miners in the pack, and they're not looking so good after that fight with the miners. But they do get a key rear charge, but the leadership of these dwarves is not going to break. Not easily, at least. 150 kills before this hammerer broke, and it basically killed all the vampires on that flank. Slayers are being nicely held up with zombies here by the vampire player. This is going to be a pretty close battle, it looks like. The Rune Lord and both Runesmiths are both alive, and Manfred's going to struggle to do a lot of damage to those units, and I think that's the biggest danger for the vampires here. Manfred's pretty good in combat, but he's not stellar. If he were to combine with the White King, might be able to get the job done, but the White King is trying to go it alone back here versus the Rune Lord and some infantry support. It looks like Manfred's trying to push his way over, but the White King he's taking a beating. A dragon or something like this would have wrecked the Rune Lord pretty well because it had armor piercing. This version of Manfred does not have armor piercing, and although the White King has very impressive weapon strength, again, it's not armor piercing. There's a lot of armor on the Rune Lord, and you've still got to kill Runesmiths too, who also have a lot of armor. And the longer those Runesmiths are alive, the less likely you are of actually winning the battle. And it's because their constant buffs to the dwarf infantry just make them an absolute nuisance. And they are not easy to take down. I think that the dwarf player was a little bit lucky in this battle that the vampire didn't pick a group of like monster units that could have easily destroyed the Rune Lord while he's on his anvil. That's the risk you take when you put him on the anvil. When he's on foot, he gets knocked around, and it takes a ton longer to kill him if enemy units are mounted. So yeah, you got to be aware of that. Vampire players bringing in more zombies, really trying to work their way out of this. And there are a couple of cryptors left, but it looks like they may be crumbling. There's some miners and the grumbling guard over here. There's not any hammerers left, but this one has regrouped. Well, there's one hammerer left at 152 kills, so one hammerer is really getting it done here. There's a Master Rune of Oath and Steel. Look at that. Some people don't think that Rune of Oath and Steel is worth it. It definitely can be. It's not like the crazy strongest thing, but it definitely can be worth it. The vampires are left. At this point, Manfred is gone. The White King is gone. They all crumbled due to army losses. So the dwarf is actually going to pull off a victory here. Yeah, so I don't think a hammer rush build like this is a super viable thing, but I think that it actually is kind of a fun thing. I think against a really talented vampire player, it's probably not going to work, but I think that this was a fun pick for this particular player because he was able to actually go up against a faction that didn't have the type of things that normally wreck hammerers. A corpse cart would have been a huge nightmare here for the dwarves, so that was... or I say a corpse, sorry, a mortis engine. The Claw of Nagash would have been an absolute nightmare for the dwarves in this battle because the only thing they had to kill it was the cannon, and the cannon can certainly help do that. But with the Blood Knights and stuff that were around too, it always puts you at a huge risk. So the Claw of Nagash is absolute murder on the dwarves because they can't catch it. So if you don't bring ranged units and keep them safe and have a way to kill it, it will absolutely ruin you. Unless you can beat the vampire on army losses, which can be hard when the Claw of Nagash is tearing away your hit points at a pretty rapid rate, especially if you bring a small army like this that is in a somewhat condensed area. The Claw of Nagash can really get a one-up on you. But, I mean, again, you can see the hammerers do impressive damage. I think that for these guys to have been more viable in multiplayer, they probably just needed a bit of a cost reduction. I think that their stats kind of make sense. They're somewhat vulnerable to missiles, and they don't have shields, which is kind of their downside, but they dish enormous damage. But typically, their cost makes them a little bit forbidding if you're going to be using them in multiplayer. The Peak Gate Guard weighs in at a whopping 1,600, which I believe makes it the most expensive infantry unit in the game. But when you're dealing armor sundering magical attacks, yeah, it's kind of a big deal. And then you have the typical hammerers here with 50 weapon strength, and when you take a look at the breakdown on it, 40 of its armor piercing. So these guys will dish immense damage to enemy units. Now, where do they do break from a typical high, like a Black Orc, for instance? A Black Orc would probably beat these guys. Probably. I haven't tested that head-to-head, but the charge on a Black Orc is significantly higher. 44 melee attack, though, is pretty good. That's a pretty high melee attack. So hammers definitely do have good stats. I use them in campaign a lot. I don't use them in multiplayer as much. Hope y'all enjoyed this one. It's just fun. Quick. Actually, you know, we got time for one more. What am I talking about? We can do 2 battles around here, folks. We can do 2 battles. There was this one right here I wanted to show you all, which was a Balthasar Gelt battle versus Wood Elves. And I figured this would be fun because you all don't get to see Balthasar very often, and it's Balthasar, an Empire Captain, and a Steam Tank. So, should be pretty enjoyable. Balthasar is a lore of metal. This is interesting. The person left him on foot. That's probably a smart idea. The Wood Elves can be tricky for, say, Balthasar to deal with in the air, and your flying units can potentially get wrecked up by Elven archers. So there is a Spellsinger Lore of Life. Let's take a look here. A mix of Hagbane tips and Starfire shafts. A couple of Azrae Spear, like this pick versus the Empire. The Azrae Spear are very good. And then the Eternal Guard is the main line, and then an Orion build from the Elves. I like it. On the flanks, we got some Wild Riders with shields. Nice build, I think, from the Wood Elves to potentially deal with lots of different Empire threats. There is one Empire Knight here, and believe it or not, the Wild Riders will do decent in that fight. So there's one Empire Knight on either flank. I see the Silver Bullets, a standard handgun, and a crossbow, a Steam Tank, 1 greatsword in the back. Looks like just 3 cheap swordsmen and 2 cheap spears up front, so kind of typical for the Empire to sacrifice on infantry power since their infantry are not top tier. And I hear a lot of people complaining about greatswords. Greatswords are no longer like the crazy man beasts they were when this game first released, but they're still pretty good. They're still pretty good. The Steam Tank's going to be firing away. The Steam Tank's going to be a fun unit. The Glade Guard with Starfire shafts are an extreme risk to the Steam Tank. Let's see what spells Balthasar's armed with. So I think one of the few things that Balthasar could be considered good at would be to help bring down an enemy lord if he does it right. Let's see what spells. So Transmutation of Lead is a great hex on an enemy lord, especially if you combine it with Plague of Rust. Yep, which he does have. An Overcast Plague of Rust will take away 60 armor. And then if you were to combine that with a Transmutation of Lead, which would be a lot of magic, you can basically wreck an enemy lord. Really, really bad if you have the right units to follow up on it. So the Empire Knights are trying to catch the Wild Riders, who are making a beeline for the Silver Bullets, and they actually get stopped by the Steam Tank. That was really unfortunate because the Wild Riders could have done a huge amount of damage to the handgunners, and over here the swordsmen are already suffering heavily at the hands of the Glade Guard, who can fire while moving. That's one of the cool things about the Elven Archers. And yeah, and again, look out here. I don't know if these guys got caught on the hoof, but the Empire Knights just being slaughtered by the Wild Riders. Wild Riders have high melee attack and weapon strength, but they lack armor. And then the Empire Knights have high armor, but lack the weapon strength and melee attack. So Wild Riders are actually a pretty decent cavalry unit if they're used properly. They're very fast, and they do a lot of damage to unarmored units very quickly. And even against like those armored cavalry, if they don't have enough hits to punch back, they can be good. So the elf is engaging the Empire. We're seeing some of these units fire back. Let's see, where is Balthasar? I've lost track of him. He's okay. He's just kind of back from the battle a little bit. Orion is coming up. The Elven Infantry is gonna do decently, though it is overmatched trying to come uphill. The Azrae Spear here under a withering barrage from the Silver Bullets. Great hits by the Silver Bullets. Orion's Hounds hit the Silver Bullets, though. And Orion's taking some fire here, and he's about to get attacked by great swords, so this handgunner might be able to get away, and then the combination of support was able to turn the fight on the Wild Riders, so nice job getting rid of the Wild Riders. Balthasar appears to be kind of following the steam tank here. I'm not sure I like the steam tank attacking these Azrae Spear because they do have armor piercing, but it can kind of just plow through them. But if they really got focused on it, I'm worried that they could actually cause a lot of damage because they're anti-large and anti-armor, and both of those things might potentially count versus the steam tank. But the combination of the steam tank's terror-inducing, which the Azrae Spear won't rout due to terror, but they did get beat up enough that the Empire Knight follow up. Oh, the Empire Knights have a great opportunity here. They need to get to those archers and get there quick because these Azrae Spear have reactivated. And same thing over here. Stop chasing the routing units. Try and get back over here to the archers. The Empire's infantry fight's going all right. The Empire captain is trying to take down Orion along with the greatswords. I think that there is a plague of rust or a transmutation of lead. So definitely takes Orion's stats down. Pretty decent deal. And Orion's hurting pretty bad there. Let's see what happens. So the steam tank, yeah, the steam tank is taking immense damage over here from the combination of Hagbane tips, Starfire shafts, and the War Dancers. So the steam tank definitely should have pulled away from the War Dancers, though they are pretty quick. Looks like the Empire Knights are going to try and run down the archers, but the fact that these spears are going to survive the engagement with the steam tank means they'll probably catch up this cavalry. And they actually did do pretty good at pulling down the steam tank. And you can see here, Orion actually managed to live somehow, got away from the Empire captain just barely. I would have liked to have seen Balthasar using, well, so his anti-armor thing really wouldn't have mattered against Orion. So I think the transmutation of lead probably make the most sense as a hex. None of the elf units have a ton of armor, so the Plague of Rust is not particularly valuable, though. I mean, it's not a bad thing by any means. It's a cheap spell, and it can help tear up units just a little bit. You can see that the power bar actually here is in favor of the Empire at the moment, but the Empire Knights are going to get shredded by the Glade Guard. There's still an Azrae Spear unit to help deal with the small remaining amounts of cavalry, and there's a Spell Singer, Lore of Life, and ooh, they're going to hit Orion with a regrowth. That is bad news for the Empire, because Orion was basically dead, but now he's being healed. Let's see if the Empire Captain and the guns can do anything about him. He's getting a significant healing. Took a nasty charge there from the Empire Captain, but he's gonna deal with that Empire Captain real quick. You can see his giant spears that he's thrown there. Yeah, it's not good. Not a good time to be an Empire Captain. But he's taken significant damage. The regrowth is over, and he's going to be kited a little bit by some of these missiles. Plague of Rust does take away what little armor Orion has. I like that play, but then Earthblood immediately drops from the Spell Singer too. That healing can just be frustrating, so Orion's actually gaining hit points despite the situation, and poor Balthasar is going to get run down by a far superior Legendary Lord. Balthasar was definitely made better with what they did to the Lore of Metal, but the Lore of Metal, I think the Lore of Metal isn't great. It could definitely be a little bit better, but I think it would be still okay if they could just find a way to give Balthasar some meaningful use in battle. So that's a valiant defeat for the Empire, and I appreciate them submitting a defeat, by the way. I'm not sitting here saying all of you have to submit a defeat, but it's kind of cool every now and then people submit a fun battle, even where they were defeated, so that it kind of sticks it to some of my viewers who say that I never show a player losing or something like that. So in any case, there we go. It's fun replay. Thank you for showing us some Balthasar action there, Tanya the Evil. And Styx, nice play there with Orion. We don't get to see Orion too often either. So 2 unexpected lords meeting in combat. It was a lot of fun. Enjoyed the action from both players. Hope you enjoyed it tonight. Appreciate MSI sponsoring my channel. They're fantastic. They're helping me with this giveaway and doing a whole lot to make sure I have the best equipment. I appreciate you, my awesome viewers, for being here. I really hope you enjoy this. And if you want to see more, make sure to click my logo in the bottom right-hand corner and subscribe. You'll be the first to know whenever there's new videos or other content coming your way. HeirofCarthage, signing out for now. I will see you soon.